Hello, Peace Scholars and friends. I'm Avis Kalfsbeek. This is the Peacewarts Lab on July 18th, 2026. If you prefer just the short peace classes with no and pauses and just who knows what we're going to cover. No, I know what we're going to cover today. You can just skip this and go to the regular Peacewarts classes. But we're going to do probably one item of each of the homework. We had 3 Peacewarts classes this week, episodes 287, 288, and 289. And the entire set of Peacewarts starts on episode 200. And then there's an orientation and a festival, an imaginary festival, getting ready for the classes. Starts at 198 and 199. So today I thought we would go over some homework if you want to hang out for that. I read a Shakespeare play a month. I'm just going to tell you about that very briefly, tell you what I've been working on this week. And then I thought what we would do at the end was I heard about some places where you can go to get your news, but also see where the news source falls in its bias. And I'm interested in that. So I thought we would do that at the end when we kind of look up what's happening in the world in war. I think we'll just take a look at Iran. And so, yes, this week I started in on the second book in the Peace Experiment series. And this is the decade of the 60s. And so I won't go more into that today, but that's just something I was working on. I also decided to make my Pedro series clean. I'm getting ready to put the books on Kindle Unlimited, and I had the books in a different publishing software called Vellum, and I decided to put everything into Atticus, and I can eventually do a box set and sell them all together when I finish book 8, which I'm going to finish this year, called Infinival, on the Commons and music festivals. So since I'm doing all of that anyway, I mean, Camus's personality is, let's just say it, she uses the F word because the climate is not in a good situation and she's feisty. And so, but we can use language in other ways than swearing. And I just worked on one more year yesterday, and oh my goodness, I had some bad words in there. Nothing, it's not a sexual book, but it just has some profanity. And I think that the reach of the books, it will help. You know, some people just aren't going to want to pick up a book that has the SH or the F word in it. And there really are sweet, adventures regarding One More Year is about overconsumption. And so I don't think of them as, hard-edged books. So I think this will put them more in line. But that's what I'm doing, and spent some time doing that. And so let's just look at the homework. So the first class that came out on Monday was episode 286. So we're in Resonant Charms, and the little blurb on Resonant Charms is, this department studies language choices, rhetoric, and modern media propaganda literacy, focuses on public communication mechanics to prevent manipulation masquerading as consensus. And as I said last Saturday, I didn't give an update on my date with myself. I will. I'll tell you about that. This department, this is our 4th department, it's really usable things I've found, thinking about how I want to communicate and just how, ways to communicate in life that are more kind and have more compassion. So let me just go to 287. Okay, so episode 287 was the mirror question. And we explored the mirror question as a tool for decompression and restorative justice. We discussed the 3 mirrors for content, feeling, and need, and the importance of the impact before intent sequence. We examined Navajo peacemaking courts and the Oakland Unified Restorative School model to see how reflection can replace retribution. So number 1 on the homework was look up the Oakland Unified Restorative Justice model and find the 3 classic circle questions used to resolve a conflict. Okay, we're going to do that. While we're looking that up, I will tell you, I did take myself out on a date last Saturday. I did put on something other than a tank top and shorts today on Saturday for my recording. I'm thinking, gosh, maybe if I just get dressed one day, not dressed, but, wear something other than my writing attire, and I take care of my mom, so I'm always casual. Maybe if I just do that one day a week, I'm not taking myself out for a date today, that I will just ward off, the moo-moo and progressing to, the house coat. That's a joke, but not really. I think as we get older and, you just get in the groove. And when I was out last week, I tried to go to this noodle bar in Chico called Raw Bar, and they were polite and lovely, but they had too many people for the lunch service. I'm sure they have more servers on at night. And so this was 1 p.m. and they had people waiting. And I waited for probably 15 minutes, but it didn't matter that much to me where I was going to go. It was just that I had gotten myself out of the house and looked nice. And so I went to a different cafe called Tin Roof Cafe, and got my mom a little treat, a little chocolate cheesecake to bring back. By the way, I've been trying to get our household back to vegan. Obviously, if I bought the cheesecake, we're not there yet, but I did get plant-based butter and plant-based cheeses, and I do buy her some frozen things just because I'll cook things during the week, but taking care of her and feeding her 3 meals a day, I will rely on those from time to time. And sometimes, so I do plan to do a podcast episode when I'm fully back to, we'll go into more detail on all of that soon. But when you're a caregiver, it makes it more complicated. And we'll be talking about that. So I went to Tin Roof and had a lovely time. Did a little journaling, had a nice, beautiful cup of coffee, and I didn't have lunch. I ended up having like a pastry type thing. They didn't have much in the way of vegan food there, but it was lovely just to get out and to see people out and about. We have a house in kind of towards Upper Bidwell Park, and it's great, and it's perfect for us. But when you're downtown and you see there's so many college students in Chico, and downtown Chico is awesome. If you haven't been to Chico, you should. It's a great, great town. So the Oakland Unified School District Restorative Justice Framework utilizes a 3-tiered system centered around community building and resolving conflict through healing rather than punishment. And I believe that this is regarding if there's a suspension. And so while the standard OUSD restorative dialogue uses 5 guiding questions, the 3 classic baseline questions asked during an incident resolution circle are: what was the harm? What are the needs of everyone involved? What are the obligations to address the needs and the repair of the relationships? Okay. So we obviously could dig more into that when we're off this recording. I'm going to do that, but that was number 1 of the homework. And then we'll just read the other ones. We won't do them. The second thing on the homework is always write down a question from what you heard. And the third homework is journal about a relationship or a specific conversation where using the "did I get that right?" frame might change the outcome. So this resonant charms department is just improving our communications, which will lead us to peace, right? If we can all be better communicators. So the next episode, which came out on Wednesday, was episode 288, Common Ground Literacy. We defined common ground literacy as the skill of identifying shared values hidden beneath conflicting slogans. We introduced the 2-question drill to translate tribal language into human need. Taking a sip of coffee. Using the 2003 Women of Liberia Mass Action for Peace, we discuss how shared values can override deep divides. We also cover the false common ground trap and how to identify real shared interests. So number 1 on the homework is to look up the Women of Liberia Mass Action for Peace and find one specific tactic they used to keep both Christian and Muslim women focused on their shared goal. So the overview from just pasting in the homework said the movement unified Christian and Muslim women through the rallying. That's Teo. We always have to see Teo every time, so it's going to mess up my camera, but we're going to come down for the Teo. Can you see Teo? Teo. I can't go down to see if the camera's on him, so I'll make sure I paste a photo of him in. That was him yawning, or heavy sigh. He's sleeping. The movement unified Christian and Muslim women through the rallying cry, "Can a bullet pick and choose? Does the bullet know Christian from Muslim?" The simple but powerful logic emphasized that both faiths suffered equally, allowing the women to bypass religious divides and focus on their shared goal of peace. And then there's a whole wiki on the Women of Liberia Mass Action for Peace, and then University of Wisconsin-Madison, how women ended Liberia's civil war, and there's more on the podcast as well. And I'm going to take a little sidebar. This is something I wrote down on my notes for today. Was East Forest has several renditions of this song because he plays it live, and he has albums, and it's called 10 Laws. And it has I think the man is a nomad. I think, I could be mistaken, maybe he has traditional housing, but I think his name is Court Johnson. And he has the song's called 10 Laws, and it has this gentleman reciting, and East Forest is a pianist and has beautiful music, and check him out if you don't already know his music. Puts the voice of him speaking, and it has things like, always make sure you know where a water source is, always protect your feet. They sound like things that someone who was in the service would have as their 10 laws. So I should have pulled them up. I could do it, but I'm not gonna read them all. The one I want to mention is always disallow foolishness. And that's so, I've been focusing on that line because here's a man that was in the military, I'm sure. When you listen, oh, for goodness sakes, we're going to look up the list of Shakespeare book here. Here we go. So here are the 10. Always see the dangers first. Always protect your feet. Always be ready for cold. Always be ready for heat. Always know where a good water or source is. I don't think it's or source. I think it's water source. Always master the skills necessary. Always get the job done. Always know your place. Always disallow foolishness. Always rest whenever you can. 10 fingers, 10 laws that I live by. That's what he says. And at the very end, I'll read that too because it's part of the song. It could be that we're all musicians just singing our way through life together. But those 10 laws are repeated throughout the song, the instrumental. And I just think of that line, always disallow foolishness. Well, you could see if you were in a military situation and, you had someone going rogue that was going to harm the whole group of people there because they're doing something crazy. That seems to fit under that scenario, but it also fits if we can rise above and look at the fact that we have all of these weapons, we're killing each other. And made me think of it as we looked up that second homework where these mothers on Christian and Muslim saw all these men killing each other and children getting harmed, and they got together and they they disallowed the foolishness. So let's go to the next one is episode 289. And this podcast came out on Friday, yesterday, The Vocabulary of Dignity. We explored the vocabulary of dignity and the 3 core needs to be seen, heard, and safe. We analyzed Nelson Mandela's micro-practices of respect, including his future self language and his refusal to use sarcasm or public shaming. I really enjoy this episode. It talks about how, when we're in a negotiation or any type of interaction that might be a little tense, that if we provide that respect to the other person, and in the case of Nelson Mandela, these were generals, and he stood and he used whatever formal name in the situation would provide the most respect. And then also there's this concept which I love, which applies to everyone we talk to, is to think of this person as the future self that you want them to be. And when we have so much history, I think this can happen to people in our lives. Like my brother struggled with drugs and alcoholism, and people knew him as that. And when he would go back to his small town, you're kind of stuck in this rut of what people know you as. And wouldn't it be beautiful if everyone could see you as your future self, the self that they want you to be, or they really can see in you. So also each of these episodes have books related to the concepts. And number 1 of the homework, look up Nelson Mandela's first meeting with President P.W. Botha and find one detail about the etiquette Mandela used to preserve Botha's dignity, and that's Botha. I looked up how to pronounce it, so if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, I apologize. Nelson Mandela's first secret meeting with South African President P.W. Botha took place on July 5th, 1989 at the Tunyu's, not pronouncing that correctly, I'm sure, presidential residence in Cape Town. To preserve Botha's dignity and put him at ease, Mandela deliberately poured tea for the president himself, a gesture of deference that disarmed the staunchly segregationist leader. The symbolic 45-minute conversation over tea laid the crucial groundwork for future negotiations to end the apartheid regime. Beautiful, and there's more about it on the Nelson Mandela archive.org. Actually, that address is archive.nelsonmandela.org. And the South African History Online, which is sahistory.org. So, quick mention, add to my nerd factor. A couple years ago, I'm almost at the 2-year point. I think this is month 23 for me of reading a Shakespeare play a month. And I have a little on my website. There's something called Shakespeare Sherpa, aviskalfsbeek.com/Shakespeare Sherpa, where you can get downloadable bookmarks of the plays, not all the plays because I'm not finished reading. And there's some resources there on that page. Yeah, and it's been great. It's just trying to keep my mind going in this decade of my 60s. And yeah, I thought initially I would do some type of little club where I'd have some little accoutrement and have a little book club where I'd mail out the books, but quickly realized that I would have an audience of about 10. And so I thought, when I decided not to do the club, I'm still going to do it. And I have. And I have started working on a little related book series that I'll actually work on in earnest once I'm finished reading the books. But I would read at noon, but now I find that if I read first thing before I do any work, when I sit down at the start of the day, I'm fresh and I have the bookmark. But I bought some tiny little craft notebooks, but in coming here to Chico to take care of my mom, I didn't bring those with me. So I just fold up a piece of paper, make a little book, and as I'm going through, I just jot down the date and where I am in the book. But then if there's a little phrase, clever language, and the language can be anything. It might be a quote that I have heard because so many of Shakespeare's quotes are well known, or a quote that I like, or just crazy words. What did I write down today? I wrote down fustian, which means pompous. I also wrote down page 85 of this folder edition. Put thyself into the trick of singularity. With AI, the little tech bros are always talking about the singularity. So I was curious in that context of that Shakespeare passage. Anyway, that's what I do. It's nerdy, but you know what? What is life other than learning more about life? That's pretty much all it is. Being good to other people, learning about life, and then deciding what little thing you want to do in this beautiful life. So the last thing we were going to talk about was, where can we go for news and know, unless we were standing right there, we're always relying on someone else reporting the news. And so I mentioned the Erin Mate and Katie Halpern of Useful Idiots. They're on YouTube and on Rumble. And they had mentioned a site, and I didn't write it down, so I had to go online and try to find it. And I'm pretty sure what they mentioned was Ground News. And you can get any story and see who's written about it and see the bias of the publication. So I went and I checked that out, and it looks great. I'm not going to pay $60 a year for it right now, but if you wanted to, you certainly could. It's $5 a month paid annually, and it's a platform that makes it easy to compare news sources. So there's that. So I asked Gemini what else is out there that would be free, and it gave a few. So the best free alternatives are All Sides. This is why they considered the best free alternative to Ground News. It's a dedicated platform that provides left, center, and right bias labels for over 800 media outlets. We'll check that out in a second. Ad Fontes Media, the media bias chart. I'll put these in the show notes. That one has a chart that shows where the publications fall, kind of in a left to right, and that seemed very cool. Other useful tools: NewsGuard. If your primary concern is credibility rather than political bias, NewsGuard provides trust scores on a 0 to 100 scale. And RSS readers, Feedly or INO Reader, INO Reader. If you mainly use Ground News to curate a specific list of sources to avoid echo chambers, you can replicate this by using a free RSS reader. That's a good idea. So once you've kind of zeroed in what you want to listen to, when you know, and I think, I'm not going to pick some far right thing, because I think, our brains aren't that reliable that we're not, you hear about the people in the basement that are all of a sudden following some kookamamie thing because they've been convinced. So I don't trust my brain enough to go over and spend a lot of time at Fox News, for example. But does it hurt anything? I will, around election time, pop over there and say, kind of just to see what's going on. And I think if you research, and now with AI you can, who's a respected right-wing reporter with a background that's reliable. I heard someone say the other day, for goodness sakes, George Bush sounds pretty good to listen to compared to our current president. I didn't mean to get political, but there we are. I don't know why I said that. I didn't mean to get political. I'm about to look up Iran So let's go to all sides and see what we get. Okay, balanced news and media bias ratings. So yeah, this is great. But it doesn't tell us about Iran, but we can search it up. So go to allsides.com, and it's got 4 tabs: balanced news and perspectives. And so I'm on the first article at the top. It says Trump threatens added tariffs for Canadian wildfire smoke. Oh, well, we caused the climate change, but let us charge you money because the fires are up there. And that's not true. There's lots of fossil fuel in Canada, but it's kind of that's what it feels like, right? Oh, we're a country that's creating a lot of the climate change. Let's start fining people because their country's burning down. So from the left, well, we already heard that opinion. I just said it. No. Trump threatens Canada with tariffs for wildfire smoke over U.S. From the center, these are examples of headlines. Trump says Canada will face tariffs over wildfire smoke, claiming willful negligence. From the right, Mark Carney deflects blame on Canada wildfire failures. Climate change is everyone's responsibility. So it gives you 3 examples of how those publications are reporting. I'm going to spend more time here. All right. So I did look up Iran on Perplexity. And as I said, I watch a little news because I'll go in to help my mom, but I don't sit and watch the news. And what we got from Perplexity about the status of the war in Iran. And I thought everyone else is probably watching the news, but I just want to put a little attention on it. So the war involving Iran is active and escalating again. As of July 18th, 2026, the U.S. and Iran exchanged strikes overnight. Iran said it was suspending commitments under the interim deal, and the Strait of Hormuz remains a major flashpoint. Reuters also reported that the fragile ceasefire memorandum has largely unraveled after renewed hostilities and attacks on shipping in the strait. U.S. Central Command said it carried out another night of strikes on Iranian military and infrastructure targets while Iran retaliated against U.S. allies and regional targets. AP reported that the latest U.S. strikes hit surveillance sites, logistics infrastructure, underground weapon storage, and maritime capabilities, with Iranian officials saying recent attacks have caused deaths and injuries. And I did listen, because I had talked about Useful Idiots, I did listen last weekend, probably Saturday afternoon after I recorded the last Peacewarts Lab, and they had on a couple of people, Palestinian gentleman and another person, and they said that there are all these councils and levels of decision making in Iran, and that the decisions aren't made lightly, and it just was nice to hear people who really know the situation talking about it. I just think the more we can learn, the better. And my purpose of just bringing it up is that I want personally to put my attention on a place that's in war. And so I'm just sending peace to all parties involved, all the leaders, the soldiers, the civilians, the children, the animals, all the living things. Peace is here. Alrighty, thanks for tuning in, and hope you'll check out Peacewarts if you haven't already. And if these rambling episodes drive you crazy, then you can skip it next time. And I just want to send you lots of love and wishing you a beautiful week.